Hey guys, Adam here with another video on arcade game repair, and in this video we're going to talk about monitors. Now I'm going to preface this in saying that monitors is not my forte. I don't deal with monitors. I do understand the basic concepts of monitors, but I'm really a digital guy. I'm not so much an analog guy. But lately I've been working on a main build that came with a nice big 25-inch monitor, but it had some issues and I had to go through the whole process of getting it all worked out. And so I figured while I went through all that process and learned what I learned, I'd pass it on to you, and so hopefully you guys who are dealing with the same issues with your games can work on your monitor. So we're going to go through the different steps of degaussing a monitor, working on purity, convergence, playing with the rings and all that scary stuff, and kind of just the simple steps you want to go through to kind of get everything dialed in nicely. So hopefully you find it interesting, and without further ado, here we go. Alright, so this is the monitor we're going to be working with today. This is a 25-inch monitor from, I believe, Visual Displays, which from what I'm reading on Clav is not a very high quality monitor, but it's what came with the cab, and so that's what we're going to be working with today. Beggars can't be choosers, so here we go. The other thing you're going to need, obviously, to work with these is a test pattern generator. This is, of course, the test pattern generator from CraftyMech.com. Aaron's a great guy and hooked me up with one of these. What I really like about this test pattern generator, aside from the fact that it's got all sorts of cool built-in patterns, you can see right here in the dip switches, it allows you to selectively turn on and off the individual guns. Now you could just do that kind of manually by playing around with the drive. There's RGB drive and bias up on top here, and every monitor's got stuff like that on the neck board. You can turn down the guns. But what I like is to be able to just put the guns where I like them, and then just on a whim turn off RG or B depending on what I'm working with. And we'll get to that in a little while. You'll see why there's a benefit to doing that. But anyway, this is a wicked useful tool, so I highly recommend getting on the waiting list and grabbing one of these. If you're going to be dealing with monitors in any way, it's definitely the tool to have. The other thing you want to do, you could do this in the game. I happen to be doing it on the floor here just so I could have different perspectives, different cameras going, and it gives me a lot of room to kind of move around and play around with the rings in the back. I have an isolation transformer, which of course you want when you're working on any kind of monitor. Isolate the monitor from the rest of the AC in the house, and that's pretty much it. So let's fire this guy up, and then we'll see how things look from the get-go. Okay, so right off the bat you can see we have some serious color issues going on here. If I go through some of the different patterns, checkerboard, you can kind of see it. Where you really see it is in the color bars, right? These should be totally separate, distinguishable color bars, and they're kind of all, we got some kind of rainbow action going on here. So the field is way off, and this thing needs to be degaussed. Now a lot of the monitors will come with an automatic degaussing ring around here. I don't know if mine is working properly. It sure doesn't look like it from what I'm seeing here. So in the case that maybe yours is not working either, or maybe it's just not doing its job properly, what you'll have to do is get a degaussing coil so that you can do that or perform that step yourself. And that pretty much looks like this. So this is a degaussing tool. I don't actually own one. I stole this from John Jacobson. And so this is what we'll be using today to kind of get rid of this issue. And what it does is it kind of just equalizes the magnetic field in the tube so that the guns are pointing where they need to, and the saturation is where it needs to be, and all that kind of stuff. And so what we want to do is basically use this tool from afar and kind of move it in a circular-like motion, slowly bringing it closer to the tube until you actually get right to the glass, and just continue to move it around in a circular motion, and then work your way back out. And you'll see the colors will kind of go crazy for a while, but as you pull it back out, when you finish the process, they all line up to where they need to be. So let's go ahead and do that right now. Alright, so I'm standing about, I don't know, 4 or 5 feet away from this thing, and as soon as I fire this up, you're going to start to see the field influence the color and everything. So why don't we start from back here. We're going to move it in a circular motion. You'll see we'll move it up close again, and then we'll end up back to where we started. You can kind of see the colors moving around there. Right up to the glass, and then start working your way back. Alright, so we're really close. You can see how that brought all the color back. There's one little area over here that I want to address, so I'm just going to try it again and just pay attention to this area right here. Try not to knock the camera over. Right up to the glass, and then just slowly take my time, bring it back here. So there's still a little bit something going on here. Let me try this a couple more times. Wipe that off and just see if I can get that area cleaned up. Well, that's a little better. I don't know if it's 100%, but I don't want to mess with it too much because one other thing that can cause that is purity, and that's what we're going to tackle next. So I think we're going to leave it right now. The color bars are back, and that's looking good. If I go through some of these different steps, though, those are looking good. That's looking good, but you can kind of see there's some convergence issues. Where you really notice it is, of course, on the crosshatch pattern. And so the way this works is you've got RGB. You've got red, green, and blue guns that are all firing at the screen here. And to converge is to bring them all together, and when you get RG and B on top of each other, you get white. Now, if you look really close, and I don't know if my camera can pick it up, it looks like it's doing a pretty good job. You can see that the guns are not hitting properly right where they need to. What am I looking at? Right here. Right? So you can individually see the R, the G, and the B, and those should be on top of each other, and you get kind of a white color. If I scroll over a little bit, you can kind of see areas where they're doing a better job and it's looking whitish. But this is definitely an issue, right? We want all those to converge into one point. And so this is really the pattern you want to use when you're testing convergence. When you're looking at other patterns like the black and white checkerboard, you can kind of see areas where there's convergence issues. There's some blue leaking over there, there's some red. But really the one you want to look at is the crosshatch. That's the one you're going to use primarily to deal with that. And so how do you set convergence? We're going to get to that in a second. The one thing you want to do before that is get your purity all set up. So the way to do that is to really get it on a red screen, or if you have a white screen, that'll work too, and you just turn down the green and the blue guns. But what's nice about this test pattern generator is I can just concentrate on a red screen. Great. What we're going to do next is loosen the neck. Okay, so on the neck there is a bolt. There should be a bolt here for the yoke. There we go. So we're going to loosen this bolt. First thing I'm going to do is put gloves on. We'll get to that in a second. We're going to loosen this bolt, and we're going to take the yoke and move it all the way back as far as we can. And what you see, what will happen is we'll kind of get this a bluish, a reddish, and then a greenish and a bluish blob, kind of all visually on the screen here. What we want to do is center the red blob as much as we can into the center of the screen using the purity rings. Okay. So the purity rings are the rings that are closest to the monitor itself, the glass here, okay, or the tube rather. And so there's 3 sets of rings, and I'll go over in a second what those all do. But the purity rings are these right here. If you can see, let me zoom in even more. Okay, they're these rings here that are closest to the tube, okay? And then you have these other 2 sets of rings that we're going to be using for convergence. So right now we just want to focus on this set of rings. Let me get on my gloves, and then we'll take a look at the purity. Alright, hopefully you guys can see this. I got a couple cameras going here. So yeah, you want to wear some kind of protective gloves. I threw on my wife's dishwashing gloves here, which should be enough. Mainly you don't want to touch. You can see how the coil has got some exposed points here. You don't want to be messing with that. And really, I mean, I'm just going to be conscious of what I'm doing, really just localizing this area. There's no reason to be mucking with anything, down below or on the neck board here just yet. And so really all we want to do is just loosen this yoke bolt and then move the yoke back. And actually, I should point out one more thing here. So your yoke chances are is going to be not really secured, but there's going to be wedges in place like you can see here. And that was from basically the person who aligned it originally. We're going to remove those and reuse them later once we redo all the alignment. So let me just remove some of these here. Lots of times it'll have glue on them. These appear to be glueless. And another thing you'll also note too, and you can tell somebody's been playing with this yoke already, or this monitor, because lots of times there'll be some hot glue that's laid down on top of the rings, the convergence and the purity rings, because after when they have them at the factory and they set them all up properly, they'll throw some hot glue down there so that the rings don't move. I don't see any here, so this has obviously been tinkered with at some point. And so you may want to do that. Once you get this whole thing locked in with respect to convergence and purity, take some hot glue or something and lay a little strip down, and that'll keep things from moving when you're moving the game around in your game room or to a friend's house or whatever. And so anyway, that's just something you want to do after the fact. So let me just go ahead and make sure that this is loosened up. I think it's probably loosened up enough. There we go. And so if you look on the screen here, you'll see that other colors are coming into play. Alright, and so what I want to do is just move this far back as I can go. Looks like the set of wires here. Let me get those out of the way. And I just want to move them back as far as I can go. And so now you can see we've got a lot of color on the screen here, red, green, and blue. So what we want to do is, first of all, before we move this yoke back towards the center of the screen, is try to get the red localized to the very center of the monitor here. Let me see if I can just put a wedge just temporarily in place to get this kind of lined up where I want it to be. That's not bad there. But you can see here, it's actually not too bad. Let me try moving some of these purity rings here and see if it has any major effect. So I can see, so it's moving my red around a little bit. Let me spin them this way just for a second here. Actually, that red is not bad. It actually looks to be pretty localized in the center. I'm just trying to be mindful of where the red is ending up here. So you can see, like, it's too far to the left, it's too far to the right, and so I'm just trying to put it right dead center there. That's not too bad right there. Now obviously you can see, way up here I'm off, and that's just because the yoke is not really aligned. As I'm going to put the yoke back in place, if you rotate it left or right, you can see how it takes care of that issue there. And so that's actually not too bad. So what I want to do now is move the yoke back towards the front of the glass until just the red is showing. Find that sweet spot where if you push it too far forward so the other colors appear, if you move it back the colors appear again. There's a little sweet spot where just the red is appearing. And so what I'm actually going to do now is not tighten it down, but snug it up a little bit, because if it's too loose, then as I'm trying to finish up, it's just going to want to continue to move around. I just want a little bit of slack in there, or firmness rather, so that it stays as I'm moving it forward. Like if I let go now, it's not going to want to slide back. And so now what I want to do is just, again, keep an eye on this, make sure my yoke is, clockwise or counterclockwise, whatever it needs to be, and move it forward so that just the red is showing. See if I can move it a little bit more. We're getting there. Alrighty. That's looking pretty good right there, actually. And if I move it too far forward, and I can see the blue in the corner now, and two corners. So let me slide it back, concentrating on just getting the red to fill up the whole screen there. Yep, green's coming back. I move forward again. That's not too bad right there. I think what I may do is tighten it down right there. Just throw a couple of wedges in place just temporarily so that it's somewhat centered. I don't want the yoke to be like, tilting too far down or too far up or side to side. And so let me just throw something in here temporarily to kind of keep it in place. There's a little bit of stuff going on over here, but maybe we can take care of that as we go forward here. There we go. So just moving it just a hair. That's actually not too bad. Let me check my other colors here. Slide this over. There's green and there's blue. So convergence is still way off. but the colors are looking pretty vibrant, and things are looking pretty good here, or at least better than they did before. Okay, so now that that's all set, now we can start working on convergence, and let me kind of just talk a little bit about what the rings do and how to keep that in mind when you're playing with all this stuff. Alright, so the way this works is we have two sets of convergence rings. We've got the middle set here, and then we've got the set that's kind of in the back here. And the way this works is they're in pairs. So you've got two rings for the center, two rings in the back. One ring, okay, will deflect the red gun, and the other ring will deflect the blue gun. And the green gun, for the most part, is somewhat stationary. You may see it move a little bit as you're playing with these, but for the most part, it's kind of stationary. And so what you really want to do is you want to kind of separate these or move them closer together so that you can get the blue and the red to line up with each other, okay? And what you'll notice is that one set of rings is about 90 degrees off of the other set of rings. And what I mean by that is, as you're moving these rings, if you see the red and the blue moving, say, horizontally, then when you play with the other rings, you'll see them moving vertically. Now, I've read online, and some people will say, well, these are the vertical rings and these are the horizontal rings. That's not necessarily true. In fact, you'll see in a moment, as we keep messing with these rings, if you just keep moving them in a circle, you'll see the crosshatch kind of go in a complete circle. So at one point, yeah, it's moving horizontally, and then the next second it's moving vertically. So it really just depends on how far you are tweaking these rings. So again, they're kind of 90 degrees off. If this guy is moving vertically, this one's horizontal. If this one's moving horizontally, then that one's vertically. If that makes sense. So what we really want to do is, step one is to kind of get the blue and the red guns to align. Okay, and so by separating, these guys and separating those, we really want to just ignore the green for a second, get the red and the blue to align, and then once those are aligned, keep these guys together, all right? We've already got our blue and our red aligned, and move them as a pair. So we'll be moving the red and the blue at the same time to get them to line up with the green, okay? And so if you don't understand that and you're just randomly moving these rings, it's going to get very frustrating because you'll have it locked in, you'll have blue and red kind of locked in, and then as you start separating them with the other pair, you kind of lose that alignment and it gets very frustrating. So again, you want to just separate them, move them in and out, and again, you also probably want to rotate them as a pair to kind of see how it influences the test pattern there. But the goal is to really get blue and red squared away first, and then merge them on top of the green. So let's go ahead and do that now. So here we're back to our crosshatch pattern, and what we really want to do is focus on the very center of the screen here. And what you'll find is that you may get the center dialed in, but you'll have some issues on the perimeter. Those we can address by just playing with the yoke here, tweaking it up and down, left and right, or whatever. So the goal is really to get a starting point. So we're going to use that center of the screen as a starting point. So let me move my other camera close to the screen. 1 second here. And let's see, this should be the center. There, hopefully you guys can see that. And again, what we want to do is we want to get rid of green just for a second. We want to concentrate on red and blue and see if we can get those guys to align. Now again, if you don't have a fancy test pattern generator that has individual gun control, it's not a problem. You can just turn down the green gun up here on your neck board. But I do have that fancy feature, and so I'm going to use it. So let's turn off green for 1 second here. And now you can kind of really see, so blue and purple are, blue and red are there, and what we want to do is converge them to make purple. So we're just going to start playing around with these rings, the center rings and the rear rings here, until we can get them to line up properly. And again, we're just looking at that center of the screen here. Alright, so that's pretty close right there. Let me just reach over and see if any other fine adjustments need to be made. Wow, that is pretty close. Yeah, I have to say that's not bad. So what I want to do now is, let me see if I can move the screen back again. Hold on one second. So you can kind of see way up in this area over here, we've still got problems. Looks pretty gorgeous in the center here, and some of the other areas look pretty well too. But this upper area, there's an issue. And so what you want to do is revisit the yoke and just gently, rock it up and down, left and right, and see if we can kind of work that issue up here, get those to align. And I can see I got some issues down below too a little bit. So let me just see if I can. And I may have to just remove this for a second here. Yeah, you can see how it's kind of working its way out. It's actually not too bad. So I may have to put a wedge in here. It's not too bad, but it's still not perfectly aligned down the bottom and the top. Let me grab some more of these wedges here and just continue to work through this a little bit. And it's a tedious process, to be honest with you. To really dial it in, it's going to take some time and some patience too. So don't be in a rush and just continue to work with it a little bit and just go from there. And so now that we have this dialed in, what we want to do is put wedges in place, kind of as we're monkeying with this, okay, so that things don't move. And I've heard some people say athletic tape is a good thing to use, or double-sided, that double-sided tape or whatever. Basically, you spent all the time massaging this yoke to get it where it needs to be. You don't want it to move as you're moving the game around or whatever. So take the wedges, that originally used, slide them back in place to keep this thing from moving around, and then that way you won't have to repeat this entire process all over again. Alright, that is pretty darn close. I spent some time just really mucking with it. I don't know if I'm going to need a larger wedge here. For whatever reason, this monitor, the yoke really wants to be kind of wedged in this direction, and that took care of like some of the issues on the leftmost part of the screen. Excuse me. So anyway, I think we got our red and our blue lined up. Let's turn the green gun back on. Okay, and so you can see now we've got green and we got purple. And so really what we want to do is not separate the rings. We want to leave them together and move them as a team, kind of, or as a pair rather, until we can get the purple to line up with the green. So let's carefully move this around just a little bit here. So there's our purple. Let me see if I can just slide these over. And you can see we're starting to get some white in there. I'm trying not to separate the blue and the purple too much here. Let's grab the other pair. Yeah, I'm trying not to separate them, but they're moving on me. Let me see if I can adjust them a little bit more. We're getting closer now. I just need to separate these, I think, in the opposite direction here. It's hard because all these rings are so close together. I don't want to muck them up. Alright, let me put the red and the blue back. Let's see here. Move that down. Ooh, we're getting there. That is close. That is pretty darn close. Let me just play around this a little bit more, and then I think we may have it. I think that is probably as close as we're going to get it right now. Let me move this other camera back. That is pretty good. There is a little bit of red over here that I can see peeking out from the white. And I've heard from people on Clav who are far more knowledgeable with monitors than I am that you can get these little strips. I think they call them convergence strips. Basically pieces of plastic with a little bit of metal on the end. You can search for eBay and you'll probably find them. Or just search Clav, you'll find them. And what you can do is you can slip them carefully underneath the yoke, and it disrupts the magnetic field just a little bit in that area. So if you were to put it in, say, here, then it would affect this area of the screen that I'm seeing an issue in. You know, down here would probably be down here. And so it allows you to kind of just really fine-tune the convergence. So I'll probably do that next. I don't think I'll cover it in this video. I don't have any of those on hand. But I'm like 90% there. So actually, when we go through a couple of these patterns here, you'll see the difference. So there's our checkerboard. The color bars are looking great. RGB. Actually, if I go back to the RGB for 1 second, so I probably will need to adjust. Oh, see, I gotta go around the horn again. This guy here. So, oh no, I'm sorry. Well, maybe you can't pick it up on the camera, but I can see it here. What you want to see is just, you know, darkening shades of RG and B. And actually, as I look closer to the screen, I can see. I may turn up the guns just a smidge, but you want to see like almost black, but kind of like a dark red here, dark green, dark blue. But yeah, those colors are looking pretty vibrant, and different shades of gray, RGB. Here's our white. I may adjust it just a little bit to make that white really pop. And of course our test pattern. So yeah, I think this is a success. And so hopefully you found that interesting. I mean, I had never touched monitors before. I mean, I've repaired monitors, but never had to deal with conversions or any of this kind of stuff. And so this has kind of been what I've been, you know, just exploring with these past couple weeks. Thought I would share on, you know, what I learned to you guys. And yeah, so hopefully you found it interesting, educational, and can use it when you guys are tweaking your own monitors. Well, I think that's going to about do it for this video. Thanks so much, guys, for watching. I know it wasn't the video PCB logic video that you guys have been anxiously waiting for, but I did do a lot of footage for that. I captured it already. I have some other bits and pieces that I got to record before I can kind of put it all together. But it's definitely in the works, and of course I'll let you guys know when it's out there. So other than that, of course, you guys can catch me on Clav, AJCR125. You can catch me here on YouTube or on my website, onecircuit.com. So I think that's going to do it. Thanks so much, guys. God bless, and we'll catch you on the next one.